Honorable Speaker, let me first thank Senior Counsel Otiende Amolo for those issues and indeed confirm that the Honorable Otiende Amolo did write a letter, very detailed letter with all those 13 or 14 issues, and he did copy my office, and I remember, Honorable Speaker, discussing the same with yourself and the chair of the JLAC committee, who unfortunately is not here, but the vice chair, Honorable Mutusa, is here. And we have further discussed all the issues that were raised by the Honorable Otiende in his letter with the chair and the vice chair of the JLAC committee. And I believe, Honorable Speaker, given an opportunity, since the chair is away, the vice chair should be able to appraise us on where fast they are in terms of looking at those issues among us, many other issues that came up during public participation, and which, as has been indicated by Senior Counsel, George, already some of those issues are being addressed by the JLAC committee. Honorable Speaker, it's also worth mentioning to the Honorable Otiende Amolo that in the House Business Committee this morning, we did agree to stand down that conflict of interest bill from this afternoon sitting for Committee of the Whole. First, to allow the JLAC committee to complete the work that they were already doing, to maybe later tomorrow or the day after, whenever time will allow, and when the House Business Committee will be able to schedule business. But Honorable Speaker, just to note that as much as I may agree with the Honorable Otiende on a number of things touching on, especially on definitions of who a relative is, who a public officer is, because that which is explicitly provided for in the Constitution, we cannot then seek to redefine it in statute, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the country, and any other law that then we enact that is in conflict with the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, when I was studying commercial law in my CPA, we were told that it becomes ultra-vires, and therefore any such definition that goes against what is provided for in the Constitution then will be ultra-vires the Constitution and become null and void. However, Honorable Speaker, the definitions like a relative, the Constitution does not define who your relative is. But then it begs a moral question as to how far do you define who your relative is as a public officer? Your mother-in-law, your sister-in-law, some that you may not even know, if they are doing business, Honorable Speaker, and they don't eat in your house, they don't depend on your pay as a public officer, they have no direct relation with you, then can you then say that there is a conflict of interest between that distant relative and yourself as a public officer? Therefore, those are issues, Honorable Speaker, that are already before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, of which I believe the Honorable Otiende Amolo is a member. I was hoping he would indicate where they are as a committee, but I am informed he was not in the meeting today, this morning, and therefore I want to believe that JLAC will be able to appraise us on the addendum they are doing that is touching on major amendments that will touch on some of these provisions that the Honorable Otiende has pointed to. But more importantly, Honorable Speaker, what is this bill seeking to do? Honorable Speaker, if you read our Constitution, Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity, this bill is breathing life to the chapter on leadership and integrity, and more so on matters touching on integrity. And therefore, I would tend to disagree with the Senior Counsel on issues that touch on integrity, that they would not sit well in this bill, because they do sit well when we talk about issues to do with corruption and conflict of interest. Honorable Speaker, Article 75 of the Constitution, 75(1)(a). Honorable Speaker, if I care to read that a state officer shall, and it makes it mandatory, shall behave, whether in public and official life, in private life, or in association with other persons, in a manner that avoids a conflict of interest, any conflict between personal interests and public or official duties. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the long objective of this bill is to actualize that particular provision of Article 75(1)(a), that you'll be avoiding conflict of interest between personal interest and public interest or official duties. B, compromising any public or official interest in favor of a personal interest or demeaning the holder of that office, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, there are many other issues without even belaboring the point that Honorable Tienda also said. We do not need to go through all the 15 or 13 items he listed, but there are some that I would agree with and many others that I would strongly disagree with because they intend to actualize and breathe life to Article 75, 1A, of our Constitution. And if we are truly intent, Honorable Speaker, on slaying the monster that we all talk about, slaying the monster and the dragon of corruption, which spreads far and wide, Honorable Speaker. And I've heard the issues that are being raised on self-preservation. Even as we seek to do what we call self-preservation, Honorable Speaker, we must be careful that we do not self-preserve in a way that we entrench conflict of interest in public offices, Honorable Speaker. Because we must lead from the front as the lawmakers in ensuring that there is absolutely no conflict of interest by public officers. And public officers, I want to agree with the Honorable Tienda Amolo in that respect, that a public officer does not necessarily mean an elective office or people holding elective offices. It is not just members of parliament and members of county assemblies. We have governors, we have the executive, right from the president to the ministers and the principal secretaries who are in appointive offices. All those, Honorable Speaker, we must hold them to account using this bill and ensure that even as we seek to self-preserve, we also enact laws that will hold everybody, even members of parliament, Honorable Speaker, and members of county assemblies, and even governors and presidents and deputy presidents who are elective, to account and to ensure that there is absolutely no conflict of interest in the way they conduct public office, and there is a clear demarcation between your public affairs and your private business interests. Because, Honorable Speaker, if we are left in a situation where there is a blood distinction between what is private and what is public, Honorable Speaker, the era that we have been speaking of state capture will never come to an end. This is the opportunity we have as a house, and the country and history will judge us based on what we do with this bill. If we speak so much about the fight against corruption, and every time there is mention of a scandal here and there, the political class are usually the first to speak against corruption. Let us not just speak about against corruption and speak about corruption. Let us act. Let us enact laws that will ensure that there is no corruption, there is no conflict of interest, and in line with what we provided for when we elected to have this constitution as the supreme law of our country, that we actualize the provisions of Article 6, and specifically that 75, 1A and B that I have read. With that, Honorable Speaker, I do want to submit, Honorable Speaker, that we hold our horses as we await the JLA committee to table the addendum, and we be able to see what is it that they have proposed for amendments. And that is not to say, Honorable Speaker, that what JLAC will have proposed as amendments, if they do not carry an amendment that I intend to move, nothing, Honorable Speaker, stops any member of this House from moving an amendment to rectify what they think should be rectified in the bill. And if it makes sense, Honorable Speaker, without diluting the objectives of the bill, we shall support. But we must also do so in a cautious manner. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg that we allow the JLA committee to finish their work and appraise the House accordingly. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Ocheng. Yes, I'll come to you. I've given to David Ocheng.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to add my voice on this particular matter, and I agree with Honorable Tiende that there are issues that